For the first time ever, I am thrilled to say we have an official sponsor for the Dirt Talk podcast, and that's Ariat. I've worn Ariat boots on every job site I've visited over the years, traveling in them across 5 continents. More importantly, I have yet to find a single project where working folks, unlike me, are not wearing Ariat boots and workwear in every condition imaginable. And there's really good reason for that, and that's because it's phenomenal stuff. And the more I've learned about Ariat and the company, the more I've loved their brand. So with this, Ariat is offering any Dirt Talk listener 10% off their next Ariat order at ariat.com/dirttalk. That's 10% off boots, jeans, and workwear at ariat.com/dirttalk or at the link in this episode's description. With that, let's get to the show. Hello, everybody. Monday episode, Dirt Talk. We are going to answer some questions today. If you ever have questions you want answered on the podcast, before I begin, send them to dirttalk@billblood.com or message me on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever it is. We would love to hear from you. These are 5 I selected from Instagram yesterday. Thank you to all the kind people who sent these in via Instagram. I very much appreciate it. Question number 1. What was the original career path you were on? Well, for people that I guess haven't heard the story, I've told this a million times, so if you've heard it, I apologize. My senior year of high school, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, which is natural. Senior year, you're going to go to college. What do you do? So on and so forth. And in my fall semester, there was a construction project happening in my neighborhood. It was a big storm drain upgrade project. So it was in an existing neighborhood, really tight streets, big concrete pipe. I think they tied into 120 or maybe 108 inch, somewhere in that ballpark. Monster pipe for anybody that knows pipe diameters and been around concrete pipe before. 385 excavator, all kinds of trucks in and out because they had to bring the spoils off-site and then around and backfill. It was awesome. It was so spectacular. And I would watch down the road through the bushes and got the idea one time to call the company and ask to meet with the owner. I went to the website, Every Trucks in Pearson Construction Corporation. And so I Googled Pearson Construction Corporation. I went to the website. I found out that Rich Pearson started the company because of the About page. And then I just called the phone number on the website. It got me to their main office. And I asked to meet with Rich. And Rich said, sure, I'll meet with you. And he sent me a time after school, 3 p.m. Thursday or whatever it was. That's how accessible people are, first and foremost. If you are young, trying to get to people, everything's on the internet. Everything's available. You can go into offices. The addresses are public. You can call numbers. You can email people. Everything is available. And if you show initiative, people will probably respond in a positive way, assuming it's coming from a genuine sense of curiosity, which my interest was. So I sit down with Rich Pearson, and this is the first time I'd ever talked to anybody in construction, officially. And so I wanted to figure out if I could get a job with them, 1, and 2, what I should do with my life after that. And so he told me, no, I can't give you a job because I was 17 at the time. I had to call him back when I was 18 because you can't legally work on a job site until you're 18 years old. But he said, then study construction engineering because that's what he studied at Arizona State. I signed up first for civil engineering and then backtracked and went to construction engineering, which is almost identical to civil. And then he also told me, and this was the key part of the career advice, to go work for as many different companies as I could. He said, first and foremost, construction is a big place. You need to figure out where in construction you want to go. There is heavy civil construction, which is what I do, which is what he did. There is residential construction, building homes, apartments. And then there's commercial construction, which is building warehouses and factories and hospitals, so on and so forth. I knew residential and commercial was not for me. Civil was really what got me going. Heavy equipment was really what got me going. And so I knew I was going to be in the civil space, but he also said, every company is a little different. Every size company is a little different. And so if you choose civil, go to work for different size companies because you will learn different things at each. And so that is what I did. I was going to be Rich Pearson one day. I wanted to have a construction company. I wanted my name, WIT, on the side of heavy equipment. And my rationale in my 17, 18-year-old mind at the time was, if I had my name on equipment, I could run that equipment whenever I wanted. That's completely not at all how it works, at all how it works. But that's how I was thinking at the time. And so my perfect plan, my perfect career path was I was going to go start work for Pearson Construction Corporation. And then I was going to go find different jobs while I was in school for engineering. I was going to go end up in the best job I could find after engineering school. I was going to work up for a few years. I was going to save up and then eventually get a machine and become a contractor at some point. That was it. That was the plan. And so it was the perfect plan, honestly. And post-graduation, I could not have been in a better position. I worked for Pearson, and then I went to work for a company called Markham. I did 2 summers out in the field, and then I did some time in the office with Markham as well during the school year. Ran some equipment, got to figure out how to lay pipe, kind of. Worked mostly with Mexican guys, so I learned all the bad Spanish words, which I just absolutely loved. And then somebody basically said, hey, you've got to go see the other side of construction, not just the building side, but the administrative and management side. And so I reluctantly then applied for a really big company. I went to work for a really big company on the railroad, and then another really big company doing blasting work. And ultimately, in between my junior and senior year, I was working in the office for a mid-sized civil construction company with the presidents in Arizona and Texas at the time. And I decided, I had a bunch of different offers to consider, but decided that a mid-sized company, seeing one project, road project, about a $15 million job from start to finish was my best bet, because I could see a project from the beginning to end, and I actually helped estimate that project as well. So it was, to me, the best option. And then after that, I didn't know what I was going to do. Maybe go to another company or so on and so forth. And while I was working for these companies, I was really loyal to the companies. I was giving them my all. That was the agreement. But I also didn't have too much loyalty to hinder what I wanted to go experience and learn. And so when the opportunity to go work for a software company, HCSS, came up 4 months after I'd started my construction career in Texas officially, I decided to jump on the opportunity. And then 4 months later, I said, maybe I can go do this myself. And that's when BuildWit began. I'd saved up a ton of money. I've gotten into, I guess, my financial history in college on the podcast at some point. I can't remember when, but I'd saved up a ton of money working and investing through college. And that's what I used to then start the company, BuildWit, in 2018. And we've been on that path since, and we will be on that path for forever, it seems like. So that is my original career path, was my original career path. And now my career path is different, to say the least, but quite fun. Second question. Why are less young people choosing construction? Well, there are the common explanations. There is an emphasis on college. I went to college. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of kids growing up now in suburbia away from work, and so they're not choosing construction because they're not exposed to construction. I think that is very true. I think this next generation just hasn't been around hard work in general, and so that is perceived as laziness to the previous generation, and in some ways it is, but I think it's a lack of just exposure to hard work. I don't think working hard, is a trait. I think it's a skill. I think a lot of people think it's a trait because they naturally learn it growing up with the environment they grow up in, or their parents or their grandparents, uncle, whatever it is. But I think it's learned. And I think that because I had to learn it. I didn't have it growing up. I learned it when I was 14-ish, 15-ish in Montana, cutting trees down, mowing lawns, whacking weeds. And I'm grateful I did, because that set me up for a great short run in construction, and then set me up for a great run in trying to make a business work. But I don't think it's just one thing. I think it's a very complex problem, and I think the human mind wants to find very simple explanations for complex problems to make us seem like we understand our world. But I think one of the biggest issues that people are underestimating is that there's more old people than young people in the United States than there ever has been. And by I think mid 2030s, there will be more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 18 for the first time in United States history. If you haven't noticed, our birth rate has declined substantially over the past few decades. And again, there's not one reason for this. There's a lot of reasons for it. But the end result, nonetheless, is more old people, less young people. To replace a population, you need a birth rate of roughly 2.1, I believe. And the United States is 1.6 based on my last search. And I think that's true, within that ballpark. And so the birth rate is number of kids per woman. So you need a little over, on average, 2 kids per woman to keep a population steady. You need more than that to grow a population, and anything less than that ends up eventually in a declining population. And so I think, why are less young people choosing construction? Part of it is because there are less young people as a percentage of our population than there ever have been, and it's only getting less and less and less and less. And this is one of the core reasons why I believe Europe is ahead, is because they've coped with an aging population for longer than we have. The world's oldest populations, a majority of them are European nations. So they've had to do more with less people. They've had to do more work with less labor hours, which leads to technology and equipment specialization, work specialization, so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of reasons for it. The first thesis of BuildWit was that we can't expect young people to choose a career they don't understand or don't know exists. I think that is still largely the case. I didn't consider construction as a career growing up because I didn't really know it existed. It's in the periphery. It's something that's in the way if you don't have an immediate tie to construction. It's an inconvenience, traffic, or whatever it is. But once you have a tie to it, you start to understand it, and hopefully I can provide more of a tie to it to help inspire that next generation. But it's not just going to be me. It's going to be all of us, I think, telling that story and driving that awareness first and foremost. So I think it's a complex issue. I think it's oversimplified. And I think the companies that are being aggressive about it and are being proactive about it in many different ways are the ones that are going to win long term, no matter where the labor force goes. Third question. How did you decide to employ someone for the first time? Oh, a lot of people reach out to me about starting a business, which is, I think, misguided. I'm not the person to talk to about starting a business. I've been doing it for a little over 6.5 years. We've got over 60 people working at the company now. We're starting to become more significant, which is really exciting. It's taken a lot of work to get here, and we want to go a whole lot further. But when I started out, I think a big mistake people make is overthinking and overplanning. You can't come up with a perfect business plan. I never had a business plan. And so when I was starting out, I just needed a way to figure out what my service offering was and a way to make money. And I saw that as taking photographs, because I could take those photographs and make some social media posts for companies and hopefully attract more people to those companies, and they'd pay me for it. And then I started to get asked for other work like video and websites and stuff that I didn't understand, graphic design. I still don't really understand. And so that's when I started reaching outside to bring people in to work at the company, but on a contract basis. So I would pay them for the work that they did, but they were a contractor, which is a way simpler approach than employing somebody. It's less risky. It's less administrative intensive, if that's even a term. And you get to try out that person. They get to try you out. And so for the first year, I didn't have anybody full time. It was just me. Dan Briscoe was helping me on the side. And then I had some contractors, a bunch of different contractors that would help me. The level of work, though, after the first year got to a certain point where I just knew I needed help. I feel like you decide to employ somebody for the first time when you need to. And I needed to. I needed additional help. But fortunately, I had worked with Chell at the time. And so I already knew Chell a little bit. And so I brought him on to check out what we were doing for a week, to basically interview him for a week as a contractor before he came on full time, and allow him to interview what I had going as well for a week. And then I also spent some time with Angel, who I found through Instagram as well. I found both of them through Instagram and was able to hire them both around the similar time. Dan came on at a later time, and then Chase, who was one of the early contractors, also came on and increasingly until he came full time as well. So if you can, don't hire somebody until you have to. I'd say that's number one. Two, try people out before you go to work for them. Or if you're going to work for somebody, if you're trying to evaluate a company or individual, get a feel for that company or individual before you go to work for them. You might not have an opportunity to go to work for them, but whatever you can to get a feel, the more you understand about where you're going, the more you understand about who you're hiring, the better. And I'm a big believer in trying people out as much as we can before we bring them on. And that's a piece of our interview process now, is people are given a real world task depending on what their role will be. And we see how they're going to do it. And sometimes we have great candidates on paper that do a terrible job at the real world task. And that carries a lot of weight because that's going to be their job. And if they can't do their job effectively, what's going on? And even if we have to pay them a little bit of money to figure that out, it's well worth that money. So that's how I first decided to employ people. We've been, full disclosure, over the first few years, we had almost no turnover. And I took that. That was one of the things I was most proud about with the company is very, 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 very low turnover to about 20 people. And then we started to grow. We took on investment. We got into software. And we've probably turned over half of the people that have worked here. So I think we've got about 65 people full-time right now. And for, every different type of reason, we've probably employed almost 150 people over the past 6.5 years. Some of those were all our fault. Some of those were people that were great early on in the business that just didn't quite fit the business going forward. Some of those people we had to be proactive about and just let go for the sake of performance. Some people left on their own. There's a bunch of different reasons for that, but I also think turnover is the sign of a healthy business. I think if there's no turnover, that's a red flag. And we've tried to be better at not just bringing people in, but evaluating the team constantly and seeing if we have the right team for the task at hand. Number 4, what's been most surprising about the dirt world? As I've gotten into it, as I explained, I had no prior experience in the industry. I did not have any clue what was going to go on in the dirt world when I was getting into the dirt world, which was a huge disadvantage, but also an advantage because I just went in with an open mind. I grew up in a world, I talk all about this, one, because I had nothing to do with it. You don't really choose who your parents are or where you're born or how you grow up. I grew up in a wealthy world. And so I got to see a lot of what people think quote unquote success is. I was around money, the beach homes, private aircraft, boats, all kind of amazing cars, all of it. And I got to see, some dads were surgeons, some dads were business owners, some dads were Fortune 500 executives, real estate investors, car dealers. There was all kinds of stuff, professional sports teams, all kinds of stuff in this world I grew up in. But once I got into construction and the dirt world specifically, I just fell in love with the industry. One, because of the work, I think it's awesome. But two, the people and the sense of humility people have in this world. It's just a good place with good people. And every time I go outside of this world, there's a lot of good people, but there's a lot of people that are just terrible, they're so terrible to be around. And I just don't find that very much in the dirt world. And I think it's largely because of the work itself. When you're doing this kind of work, this hard work in the elements with so many things that you can't control, it beats you down and it builds this immense sense of humility you just don't find elsewhere in society. And that's what I've absolutely fallen in love with. And the more of the industry I see, the more I love that humble nature that the dirt world has. And I'll say that it's not just in the United States, it's everywhere I go. It's the same sense of humility in the middle of nowhere, Saudi Arabia, in the big mines in Western Australia, in downtown London. It's all this amazing sense of pride and humility. And are there the assholes? Yeah, there are the assholes. But I think the overall quality of individual and the humility, the average humility in this world, the dirt world, is far more substantial than most, if not all, other industries. And maybe that's just the trades in general. But I love it, and I don't want to go anywhere else now that I've had it. And finally, question 5: what is the biggest machine you've ever run? Well, to begin this one, I don't know if I've ever run a machine ever. I think saying you've run a machine implies that you did something productive with it. I have not really done anything productive with equipment. I have run equipment. I've run loaders and excavators in pipe settings, backhoe, the broom, the most important machine on a pipe operation in the city. I got some exposure, but I am by no means any kind of qualified operator and will never be any kind of qualified operator. I don't have the skill set. I don't have the hours. I don't have the experience. I won't ever have that. And when I'm around operators and experienced operators, I look at them like a 6-year-old just like looks at their father fixing the car in absolute awe. I don't know how they do it. It is so impressive to me, and I deeply, 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 deeply appreciate their skill set. I have, though, on that note, or with that disclaimer applied, I have had the unique opportunity to be in the operator's seat of some pretty unique pieces of equipment that most people don't have the opportunity to run. And the first one that comes to mind is when I was still permitted out at the Tanaha Hills with Caterpillar, one of my favorite facilities in the dirt world. Back in the day, I weaseled my way. I don't even know how I did it, why I did it, but man, there was some demonstration going on. I got an invite out. And after the demonstration, I got to hang out with one of the instructors, Logan, and he said, "Hey, do you want to go run one of the mining trucks around the track?" And I said, "You bet I want to go run one of the mining trucks around the track." So I got to run a 793F around the track that Tanaha had. And then there was another time I was there after a demonstration. They were cleaning up, and of course, they clean up with the 994K, because if you have a 994K, might as well use it. And I think it was Curtis. He, as I was taking pictures of the 994, was like, "You want to run it?" I'm like, you bet I want to run it. And so he let me run the 994 a little bit, which was awesome. And that was extremely cool because it's so high up. You're just wobbling back and forth, which is a little unsettling for somebody not in that position. And you can't see anything. The cylinders are so big in front of you. You don't know what's going on. But it was just a memorable experience to say, yeah, I've made a 994K go back and forth, and I've scooped some dirt, not a lot of dirt, but it was a cool experience. So shout out to those guys and the folks at Taha. So that is today's question and answer. Your questions have been answered to the best of my abilities. If you have further questions or comments, write us anytime at dirttalk@buildit.com. And with that, we will see you on the next one. Stay dirty, everybody.